Hi and welcome back to my channel, where today I'm going to be going over briefly some differences that are specific to how trauma bonds form in relationships when it comes to HPD. I think it's more common to look at trauma bonds with NPD relationships. Obviously I've got the dual kind of diagnosis. I have NPD on the grandiose side, but my relationship patterns and my primary diagnosis is very much HPD orientated, and there is quite a few differences. The first would be the role that magical thinking and delusion play, and the extent they play it too. As I said before, we don't really have a love bombing stage. If we have that connection with someone, it very rarely happens because we're very independent and very much need to be in control of our emotions. We don't like when we're out of control of our emotions, and when we are in serious romantic relationships, we end up with like a pathological dependency on our partners, which then puts quite a lot of pressure on a relationship, to say the least. So she's got the magical thinking, she's very gullible. So you're coming in on this really high level, which is inspiring confidence in your partner, and from the beginning you are creating this delusion together, right? Because while we also have supply, it tends to be from happiness, from physical sensations. My feelings are physical sensations, and I'm very emotional and dramatic. We'll be like, oh, and part of my diagnostic criteria is that I think relationships are much closer than they are. So when histrionics fall in love, it goes really, really, really fast. And at first we're great, everything's good, but then you're staying on a high and your partner's starting to crash. And then where you have the devaluation stage with NPD, the devaluation stage is actually, it tends to be for histrionics, it's our partners start to devalue us, and we're desperately responding to that, because the quirks of our personality that originally drew them to us are now kind of pulling them away from us. They're starting to form insecurities, starting to realize how pathologically different we are, how emotional, and because they are then pathologically dependent on you. If you're down, they're going to be down, and it spirals, and I think you can end up very much bringing out each other's worst qualities. But it is the shared delusion and the intensity of the emotions that make it quite distinguishable. We get completely carried away. We tend not to be able to shut off the good feelings, even when they're getting bad, until it gets to a point, there's very little you could do or say to convince us that the happy times aren't worth it. You and your partner, whether you have HPD or you're without HPD, you end up craving each other like drugs. Certainly with HPD, our brains are pretty much pure ego. The kind of grandiosity, the chasing happy feelings, the high energy, the magical beliefs, we don't cope with feelings of like rejection. We don't cope with feelings, of our partners pulling away, or things calming down. We don't understand it. This creates lots of problems. And I think we can both in, both us and our partners, then we're both trying to connect, but we're very different, and we tend to make each other worse instead of better. Because a lot of your feelings, your partner's not going to understand, because they don't have the same mental disorder. And you, of course, you don't live your partner's experience, and we can pick up on changes in mood, we can pick up on some emotions, but we can't pick up on emotions that we don't have or understand them very well. Because our feelings are very much physical sensations. Like if there's a problem and we go, oh right, something's making me unhappy, right, we'll go, okay, well I don't want that, I'll chase something happy. But when we are pathologically dependent on a partner, we're not capable in their presence of shutting that connection off. Quite happily go on holiday separate, if everything's okay, but if things are off, histrionics cannot handle it. Or if normal women are bad during their periods, like, we're hell bitches. We get so emotional, and it's terrible because we know it's hormonal, but we can't change the way we're feeling. So dealing with someone else causing our emotions is very, very hard. Everything becomes more fragile, more tumultuous, and the other thing is, you're both slowly starting to devalue each other. You're both still addicted to each other, but you're both slowly coming to the realization that, you're not compatible, and you're desperately trying to hold on to this good thing because you're like, oh, but it's really, really good when it's good. And you're in the environment, you're with them all the time, in the environment where there's all the good memories and the bad ones. But it's kind of the good ones you're worried about missing. And I think it could be quite a desperate struggle until you actually realise, no, wait, that they're bad for me. Which brings me on to my next point. In terms of after the separation, generally HPD are not gonna hoover, because with the way that we can feel emotions, very much we've done our grieving of the relationship by the time we end it, and it's just relief when we do. We've realised, okay, well, the source of my pain, it's gone, or can move on. So if they've broken up with you, they've realised that, unless there is very exceptional circumstances, I very much doubt they're going to come back, not once they have decided to leave. And it can seem very callous to people because our emotions work differently. So, once we get out of the relationship, we feel empowered, we feel good, back to normal. If you've dumped an HPD, in a few days that she's out of peace and she's not feeling the bad feelings, she's going to feel good again. And she'll come to the realization, okay, well, that was the problem. It didn't serve me. We're not meant for each other. Which is what neurotypicals do, but it takes them a lot longer to get there because we don't deal with guilt, remorse, shame, regret, and necessarily, obviously we don't have the Jiminy Crickets, even if we're parting and, we still care about the person, there will be a moment when the being in love with them will just, it just stops as soon as you know, like, there's not a future, there's more negative than positive in this, we're just hurting each other, it's doomed, it's over. It just, it goes. You know, it's the self-defense mechanism. You know, neurotypicals do it, that's where you want them to get to, but it's often them having the breakdown after the relationship and reaching out and trying to hoover. So yes, I mean, if you go to like the HPD groups on Facebook, there's mostly men, a lot of men who've broken up with histrionic, going, oh well, it was really intense, you know, and oh, but you know, the sex was great, the passion was great, she was cuddling. You go, of course she was, you know, these were all the things that she's craving, that she needs. Those are like the best parts of the relationship. As long as she's happy, she's fine, you know. And her focus is going to be, have been like very much on trying to fix the relationship. And you know, especially by the time you're trauma bonded and there's conflicting mental health, I think there's a lot of, okay, because it is, unless she has split on you, which for an HPD in a relationship you'd have had to done something horrifically abusive. But you know, if she's not split on you, you know, then you know, you've probably been in a really bad space, you've been losing your minds. I mean, my last breakup towards the end, I was having terrifying hallucinations. You know, I got a narcissistic wound so bad because I couldn't split on him, you know. I ended up at crisis point, and that's how I got my diagnosis and my awareness. Like, you know, they're really, really intense with histrionics, which isn't helped by the grandiose narcissism combined with, you know, the need for drama, the kind of the need for physical and sensations and getting rid of pain. You know, so yes, we've got the intensity of emotions, we've got delusions, we don't do the hoovering, you know, we do in the house. If you don't, it's going to end up in lots of fights. If you don't, because things that, you know, normal bickering tends to be a bit exaggerated with certifiable drama queens, as you can imagine. So that is some of the interesting differences, which are kind of unique to trauma bonds and how they develop with HPD specifically. And on a last note, if you or someone you love is in a trauma bonded relationship, you know, try and steer them nicely out of it. Friends and family could be really, really, really helpful in that. And certainly if you are HPD aware, you know, really kind of work on your things, and you know, be very honest with your family and people you trust and go to them. And I will finish it there on that note, and thank you for listening.